Hey there, welcome back to Lead Coding. The main focus of this channel is to help you in preparing for your upcoming programming interviews. So, with this in mind, we are here with an entirely new playlist in which we are going to record the interview experiences of several companies. It is always good to know about the interview procedure of a specific company before you sit for the interviews. So, we will get to know what all are the areas on which the interview is based on, how many rounds are there in the interviews, and how to apply for the interview. Today we have Aadhar with us. He's a student of Delhi Technological University and he recently got a job offer from Atlassian. So let me add him to the meeting. Hello, am I audible?
Hello, Ari. Yeah, audible.
Yes, we can start.
Sure.
So Aadhar, how did you apply for Atlassian?
Yeah, so I applied for Atlassian from my on-campus system that we have a platform that we apply for all the companies. So there was nothing different for Atlassian. Apart from it, there was a Google form as well, which asked for our GitHub IDs as well as our resumes separately.
Yeah, so basically they want to know that how much you are into development and how much you have contributed.
Yeah, definitely.
So what was the CGPA criteria to apply for the company?
I think it was 8.0 and above.
Okay. So how many rounds were there in total?
There were 4 rounds in total, including the online testing round. So first of all, there was the online testing round which was performed on HackerRank, and there were 3 questions. Secondly, there was the actual first interview round, which was basically DS Algo and CV discussion round.
All right.
Second round was system design round, and final round was HR and values round.
Okay. So can you please tell us what kind of questions were asked in the first online round?
Yeah, so first online round had 3 questions again. The difficulties were from medium to hard questions. The first question was an application of Quicksort. If you know how to implement Quicksort, it's very trivial to do that. Second question was DP question. It was the only question which I could not do completely. I passed only half of the test cases. And final question was the easiest one of them. And I don't really remember it, but it was pretty easy.
All right. So when they were finally the cutoff list, so you were called for the personal interviews, right?
Yeah, so cutoff list was actually based on the test results as well as GitHub profiles as well as resume shortlisting.
All right. So now we can discuss about the personal interviews that you had.
Yeah, so starting with the first interview, as soon as the interview started, I was first asked about myself. After that, they got right into my project. They picked one particular project and after that, they kept asking me questions about various data structures I used in that project. So I had used MinHeap, so they asked me what all algorithms I used from MinHeap and why did I use MinHeap. So it's very important to know why you're using a certain data structure in your projects. Apart from that, they asked me various questions on which project I did in which language and why a certain language was better for a project than the other language, such as I was using C++ for one of my projects and it's faster in real-time systems. So they were asking why is it faster? And
Okay.
then basic questions from languages. Then they asked me about frameworks like React and Angular. They like the specific one I remember is they asked me React lifecycle models and development lifecycle. And for Angular, I said that I do not know Angular because I have not worked on it. They asked me some basic questions in other frameworks that I have used, some database questions, and computer network questions like they asked me OSI model as well as sockets caching. After that, they jumped into one question that was DS algo. It was next greater permutation. They asked me that if you are given 132, you have to find the next greater number that is formed using these digits. So I did this in O of n time complexity and constant space. So after that, they were more interested in the follow-up question than the actual question, which was to validate the input. So we had to check if the input is correct or not. After that, they were also interested in how would I handle the negative cases. So it's actually very important that if you have a once written code, how would you actually handle all the changes that are happening in it, and how
So
clean your code is at the end of
yeah.
all of that.
So did they actually want you to implement the entire code and they were actually running it on the test cases, or they were just looking at your
No, they
algorithm?
were not running on the test cases, but they were frequently asking me to write in out various test cases and go through it every time I make some new changes and explain why I was making those changes. I was writing comments side by side, so it was not
Right.
really a problem. But they did not run it for any test cases.
Okay. So did they focus on the clarity of the code? It
Yeah,
should be clean.
they were actually specific about that the code should be clear. And one of the key difficulties I faced was once I had implemented everything for only positive numbers, then I was suddenly told to do it for negative numbers as well.
Yeah.
So I had to just jump around many if conditions and all that. So so yeah, that's what they were looking for basically. How would
Okay.
you handle such?
So how long did the interview last?
It was around 1 hour 10 minutes.
All right. All
In this
right.
around 30 to 35 to 40 minutes was CV discussion and resume part.
Hmm.
Rest of it was the question discussion. At the end there was some discussion about the languages, about again C++ and Java and Python, about questions from JRE, what is JRE, Java runtime environment, and intermediate code and all that. And
Yeah.
finally there were some questions that were asked by me.
So basically, whatever you have used, you must be thorough about the entire thing.
Yeah, definitely. Whatever is in your resume, they'll probably ask about it.
Yes. So tell us about the second round.
Second round was actually the system design for all the other interviews I talked to, but for me, I think it was more of an algorithm design round. The question was simply, there is a Rubik's cube you are given. There is nothing else you are given. You have to write a code or an algorithm to solve it. So I solved it using graph modeling. First of all, I defined various states to basically, if we have a Rubik's cube and it has certain faces and colors. So let's just make 3 cross 3 6 matrices and we have the current state. After that, I defined transitions that we can go from this particular state to this particular state.
All
And
right.
finally, I defined how would I implement those transitions in a code and how I would swap the rows to implement all the transitions. After that, I told him that, okay, Albert, I'll just apply a DFS on this from the current state to the final state. So then he asked me that how would you actually find out the minimum number of steps? So I said that I would apply breadth first search and I'll use Q. So then he asked me what would be the maximum size of Q. So I said that it would be, there was some permutation and combination formulas that I had to use and finally found that answer. He also asked me about how I would store these states. So I said we can use a Raven car type hashing function that we were on on of our states. After that, he asked me some questions about hashing, collisions, and all that. So this lasted for around 30 minutes. After that, there was one SQL query. There was a single query, but there were a lot of tables, around 6 to 7 tables, and they were frequently changing the table at the time I was writing the query. So they were again seeing how would I react to changes in the schema or the table, and how well and efficiently I can update the query so that there is no problems with the new data.
Okay. So they basically covered the system design as well as the database management system.
Database part. Yeah.
All right.
Also, there was some questions from normalization and again concurrency control and all the basic core concepts of the data structure,
Okay.
DBMS.
So basically on the schema that you were provided with, they must be asking that which type of
Yeah, which
normalization is
normal
there.
formats in it, and why is normalization important? Why is what is lossless decomposition? Why is one row column should be same and all that.
All right. So what was the final round, the third round?
The final round was the values round, which they call it, and you could also think of it as an HR round. So basically, values are extremely important in Atlassian environment. So I actually, when I was researching for the company, I read about these values. There are 4 core values that we should know about. So whenever you're going to the interview, so when I actually went into the interview, they directly asked me if you know about the values of Atlassian,
All
and I
right.
said that yeah, I've studied about them. So they just asked me that okay, just give some live examples from all of these values. So I had actually prepared some of these, but some of these I had to come up at the time of the interview because there was a lot of follow-up questions. Because if I would say that all right, I would motivate my friends and teammates, then they would ask you how would you motivate it.
Yeah.
So you should be ready for a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah. So it is always a good practice that before you appear for an HR round, you must read about the company.
Yeah, read about the company, definitely.
Okay, so how was your overall experience with the company? How was the interview? Was it a smooth procedure or did you find any hindrance in it?
Yeah, I think it was one of the smoothest procedures because usually what happens is when there's an interview and there's a time given, there would be like delays and everything.
Yeah.
But all of them almost joined at pinpoint accuracy. Like they would, there's a 4 a.m. 4 p.m. interview. They would come at exactly 4 p.m. If it would last 1 hour 10 minutes, and it would last 1 hour 10 minutes. And all of it was pretty smooth. They were all very supporting. It was just a fun time, but I was pretty tired by the end of all of it.
Okay. So all these rounds were conducted in a single day.
Yeah, they were all in a single day, and sometimes they would even be at a difference of around 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Okay. So how would you advise us to prepare for such interviews? Like how did you prepare for these?
I did competitive programming for a few months, around 6 to 7 months, and after that, I had been in development since a few years.
Like,
So I would advise that you should do competitive coding until you are um, confident in all types of lead code questions and interviewed questions, and you are confident at your implementation skills. Once you're confident at some of the competitive programming part, then you can jump on to development part, and you can learn any full stack development stack, let's say MERN stack or mean stack. And you should do a few projects that are unique, that are not just common projects like any just authorization authentication, just something that you come upon your own. So because it's just better to have a story with the project in an interview. So
yeah.
yeah.
So as we saw that there were a lot of questions from the resume itself. So if you have certain projects which you can mention in your resume, it would be very beneficial for you so that the interviewer can ask problems from whatever you have mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's a really good advantage. So if you don't have those, he must be asking something from his side, which you might not be knowing. So always keeping projects in your resume is always beneficial.
Yeah, it's also advisable to keep few data structures and algorithms that you used in your projects,
Okay.
because then they would be happy to ask from those algorithms, which you know.
Yes. So thanks a lot, Adhar, for your time.
Yeah, sure.
Have a good day.
Thank you.